Welcome everyone to our webinar on getting paid. For those I haven't met before, I'm Shelley Rush, Director of Clear Mind Accounting and Advisory, and I'll be taking you through this webinar today. So just a quick little bit of housekeeping. If you're joining me live on Zoom, then here's your settings. So audio settings, test your speakers. If you've got any questions, submit them via the Q&A. And if you need to leave at any points, just click leave meeting and you can rejoin using your link again. This is recorded, so you'll be able to access it later if you need to. All right, so thank you for making the time to join me today. As I said, it's recorded and I'll pop it up on the website under the webinars tab, I think it is. So if you need to re-watch later, if you hop out and want to watch the end later, or if you have someone that you think might benefit from it, feel free to share it. So we won't have any cameras or microphones or display names or anything on the recording, so that it stays private and able to be shared in the future. So, and if you are watching this as a recording, thank you for taking the time to sit down and watch. So one of the key issues business owners face is getting paid. Everyone's struggled to some extent over the last few years. It's likely your payment terms maybe weren't enforced as strongly as they could have been. And as the quote says, happiness is getting paid. So let's look at what this really means for you and your business. So before I get too stuck in, just a usual little disclaimer there. The information in the webinar is educational and general in nature. So if you need tailored specific advice for your particular circumstances, then just reach out. So today we're going to talk through the importance of getting paid and the 7 causes of poor cash flow. We'll look at how to calculate your cash conversion cycle and what a best practice debtor system might look like. And then we'll discuss how you can get some runs on the board quickly and start getting paid faster, and look at the next steps you could take, including how we can support you. So I encourage you to take notes as we go through, and of course if you have any questions during the webinar, pop them in the question box and I'll answer them at the end. So if anyone has I've spoken in the past or in person, I do like to talk a lot about the 3 freedoms that all business owners ideally want, and how we can help them to achieve all 3. So it is financial, time, and mind freedom. So mind freedom means less work-related stress. This can mean finally getting a good night's sleep without tossing and turning, thinking about work. It can mean having more patience and headspace to enjoy your family, friends, colleagues, whoever. Time freedom means having enough time to do the things you love outside of your business. So it could be surfing when the swell's good, chucking the boat on, going fishing when the tides are right, coaching your kids' sports team, having a 3-day weekend, going for a massage, having short days to be able to pick up the kids from school, whatever that means for you. And financial freedom is having the discretionary income to enjoy the lifestyle of your choice. So that obviously is very broad, so it could be anything for anyone, and it could be a new house, it could be a new car, it could be regular holidays, or it could be having a decent nest egg to retire with, to retire early. Everyone wants that, don't they? In reality, all 3 freedoms work together to provide you a better, healthier lifestyle. So they're all important business, but what they mean and their importance is different for everyone. And they may change over time. So right now you might want financial freedom if you're younger and you're trying to build up your business. Down the line you might want more mind freedom, less stress, or more time as you move towards retirement. Well, we all want more time, but it just depends on the other factor. So getting paid faster will help you achieve more of all of these freedoms. So if you have strong debtor recovery process in place, you'll save time that you used to spend chasing up slow payers. You'll be less stressed and no longer wondering how you're going to pay an invoice. that may be overdue and incurring penalties, interest, whatever, or tax bills or anything like that. And you have more cash in the bank, so that gives you better options to improve and grow your business, and basically achieve your financial goals. So having more cash, everyone knows cash is king, so let's figure out how to do that. So there are generally sort of 7 causes of poor cash flow. So those sort of key ones are an inadequate accounts receivable process, an underutilized accounts payable process, inefficient inventory or work in progress process, or WIP process, inappropriate debt capital structure, that's how your business is funded, overheads too high, gross profit margin too low, or sales too low. So by addressing each of these causes, you'll be able to free up as much cash as possible. We can help you address any or all of these. Today we're just going to focus on the first one, which is your accounts receivable or debtors process. So just in case I'm using too much sort of jargon, debtors is just another word for accounts receivable. They're interchangeable. So let me know if I lose you in the chat. I'll do my best. I'll do my best to keep it relatively simple to understand, hopefully. So if you think one of the other causes might be more relevant to your business, just let me know. Let us know in the feedback. We can help, let you know how we can help. So let's have a look at the impacts low paying customers can have on your cash flow. So this is an example of a cash conversion cycle. Yours might look a bit different depending on the type of business you have. For example, if you're a service-based business, you'd have work in progress rather than stock. If you're manufacturing, you might have both. So the theory behind it is the same. So no matter what type of business you have, the aim is to shorten your cash conversion cycle to free up cash. So in this example, I'll talk you through this example. Business pays buys stock from their supplier and pays for it 35 days later. On average, roughly, it takes 65 days for the stock to be sold to a customer, and then another 45 days for the customer to pay for it. So this is a business-to-business credit type arrangement. So this means that it takes 110 days from when nearly 3 months? No, nearly 4 months. From when the stock is bought from the supplier to when the business receives money from their customers. So to calculate the cash conversion cycle, we add the average stock holding, 65 days, and average receivable of 45 days, and take off the payable days of 35 as you had the cash in your bank account for those days. So this means that the business cash is tied up in their stock and debtors for 75 days. This means that the business needs to have additional cash available from wherever, whether that's owner-funded, borrowing, whatever, to cover those expenses that they incur in that time until they receive the cash. So that could be wages, it could be rent, it could be any of those overheads until they receive that cash. So in practical dollar terms, so let's say this business has an annual sales of, say, 500,000. If they don't do anything to resolve their debtors process and their average receivable blows out to 55 days, it's about an extra $13,700 cash tied up in debtors and not able to be used to pay their own bills, the business's bills. So if they put in place a strong debtors process, manage to reduce their receivable days by, say, 10, then that frees up that $13,700 of cash. So you can see how getting paid faster means more cash in the bank account. Just give you a bit more option. So what does a strong debtor system look like? So setting your expectations with your customers from the start of the relationship is way easier if you have clear documented process. It's followed every time. So we're going to look at best practice, which involves documenting your system for consistency and clarity, setting robust terms of trade, and using guides and scripts if you need to, and then utilising a third-party credit control service. So if you don't already have a written debtors process, this ideally would be your first action after this webinar. It doesn't need to be anything massive. It doesn't need to be a 30-page document, just 1-2 pages of these are the steps that we do when we're dealing with our customers. So it would detail your expectations of your customers, when and how your team should respond, and to ensure those expectations are met. So it provides clarity for your team and ensures customers are followed up in a timely and consistent manner, which will drive better payment habits for your customers. So you document things like how quickly you invoice your customers, how long the customer has to pay after receiving their invoice, and what happens if they don't pay in time. So generally, the sooner you bill the client, the sooner you get paid. So make a conscious decision to invoice quickly, whether that's the end of each week, the end of each day. If you're doing work on the 1st of the month, don't wait until the 31st to send them an invoice. And consider requesting. So if you're following sort of the old model of invoices due on the 20th of the following month, as a small business, that's a long time to offer credit for someone. So consider requesting payment within, say, 7 days, 14 days, depending on the business you're in. Like, I guess as a customer yourself, if you get an invoice, it's not due for, say, 6 weeks, you're more likely to put it aside and say, I'll pay that later, than to pay it on the spot. You're probably likely to forget it and then end up paying it when you get an overdue reminder. So if it is due within 7 days, you're way more likely to just go, oh, I'll just pay it now and get it done, get it off my desk, clear it up. So, and not have to think about it again. So the payment terms should be clearly set out in your debtors process. Think about how easy it is for your customers to pay you. So can they click a link on your invoice and pay you? What payment options do you offer? Do you have different structures that you can offer? Do the customers pay a deposit? Can they set up a regular payment depending on their relationship with you? So best practice is obviously different for every business, and you do have to consider the costs involved with offering different payment options. But it is important to consider those options. It may be worth paying the credit card fees or whatever if you're getting paid, 2 weeks early. Just make it easy, basically. You'd also be clear on your follow-up process. So do you wait till your debtors are a week overdue before you follow them up? Do you follow all overdue debtors up once a month? Ideally, you'd send a reminder the day the invoice becomes overdue to request the payment. However, depending on your accounting software, you may want to push that out a day. Xero, if you set up automatic reminders for the day after it's due, but you haven't reconciled your Xero, the customer may have paid and they would get pissed off. I would get pissed off as well if I was a customer, getting reminders every time when you've actually paid. So it may be best to push that up for 2 or 3 days just to give you a chance to make sure that you're on top of matching your payments. And it should set up how often you follow the debtors up and how you do it. So whether it's an automatic email, whether it's a personalised email, text, a phone call, however. And best practice would be to record that contact with your debtor. So the time, date you've made the call, or text how you've contacted them, and the outcome of the contact. So it may be I've called Bob 10 a.m. on the 23rd. He's going to pay next Tuesday, or whatever, or he's going to pay $250 of the $1,000 invoice next Tuesday, and then he's going to pay the rest over the next 4 weeks. Whatever the arrangement is, or whatever the outcome of the discussion. You could use a cloud-based customer relationship management software, or spreadsheets, or just document in your accounting software. You can make notes in Xero on invoices if you Xero. It doesn't really matter how you do it, just make sure you do it and keep it consistent. And then finally, if you've exhausted all those avenues, customer still hasn't paid, it may be time to refer them to an external debt collection agency, and they'll be able to chase up the payment for you to save you the time and energy, therefore giving you that time and mind freedom. So in terms of trade, they're essential if you are providing goods or services to customers on credit. And they need to be ideally accepted by the customer before you provide them with the product or service. Ideally, a signed copy. Depends on your relationship and the type of business you're in. It may be that the details are in the quote, and them accepting the quote is acceptance of the terms. And the terms that you include depend on the nature of your business. So it may be just a short little list of things, or it could be a multi-page document setting out detailed terms. It also depends on your industry and how that operates. So some key things that everyone should have in their terms of trade. So you define and include your payment terms. How long after invoicing does the customer have to pay? How do they pay? Do they need to pay a portion up front and then the rest on completion? How's that structured? Whatever the payment terms are, they need to be set out clearly. They can, as I say, this can be as part of a process, quoting process, as long as those expectations are made clear somehow. You also need to detail what your debt collection process is. So once you've put those expectations out to the customer, what do you do when their payment does become overdue? So, and then in your terms of lastly, in your terms of trade, you need to note down who covers the various costs incurred if the client does pay late. So if you don't have a clause stating that the customer will be liable for the cost of debt collection, then you'll end up footing the bill. Basically, you'll pay the collection costs, and you can only charge interest on late payment if it's clearly stated in your terms of trade. You may charge an admin fee to cover the extra resources used to chase it up, but only if it's clearly stated in your terms. So it's just important to think those things through. You may never use them, you may never enforce them, but if they're not there, you can't if you want to. So, and we can help refer you to the correct people if this is an area that you need help with that, documenting your terms of trade, or looking at credit collection. So, before you unleash your inner Rottweiler, I don't like to give Rottweilers a bad name because I love them, but your inner lion, it's important to imply some empathy. The last few years have been pretty rough on everybody, mentally and financially, and you never know what could have been happening in someone's personal life. So issues are way more likely to be resolved when we act with empathy. So keep that in mind. Consider, I guess, how loyal the customer has been in the past. They're a regular customer. They always paid on time in the past. If that is the case, then more leniency might be justified to preserve that relationship. And it's just a case-by-case basis. So ask them how they're going. Customer is another business. You can probably relate to the stress that they might be facing. Maybe they're waiting for a big customer to pay them, so they have the money to pay you. Maybe the office manager's left and they're in the process of recruiting, training someone else. Everyone knows how much time that takes up and how hard it is to find staff. So I guess asking how they're going will give you an insight into your potential causes of the late payment, and help you identify the next steps and be a bit more empathetic in your solutions. So I guess this leads into the next point of giving some payment flexibility. So the end goal is to get paid. So the sooner the better, but ultimately you want to get paid the full amount, and not have to write it off as a bad debt. So consider offering various options, maybe a portion up front with the balance paid off over a set period of time. So there's lots of different options you could look at. but you still need to be firm that you expect the payment by that agreed date. So if it's 6 weeks' time, then you need to be clear that that is the expectation, and make sure the customer knows to get in touch straight away if they're not able to meet that time frame that you've set up. So you can sort of put in place some alternatives. And I'd recommend if you're having a conversation over the phone about it, working through options, follow up with an email so something's written, and ask the client to respond that they're okay with that. So you've got an agreement with them. So having a backbone and heart is the key to balancing your expectations around getting paid and the relationship with your customers. So keeping those two things in balance. So you need to have a backbone and stand up to the excuses. So there may be a legitimate reason for late payment, but you are still running a business and you have your own bills to pay. So you need your customer to pay you. Basically, you've done the work, you've provided them the service or the goods, so you need to get paid, and you're fully entitled to. It's okay to ask for payment and be firm that the customer must pay. So, but you also want to have a heart and come from a place of care when you're dealing with the customers. So actively listen to the customer and discuss your purpose statement and link it back to that. So if you don't get paid, then you can't achieve your purpose, whatever that may be. You can't necessarily continue trading in the way that you have. You know, you've got staff to pay and your own costs to deal with. So consider the options. So can you be a bit more flexible with some customers? Be considerate in your approach, and tailor your response depending on the circumstances. So in saying all that, it can be a bit tricky and awkward and uncomfortable for a lot of people to have these sorts of conversations. So that's why we put together some scripts we can give you to help guide the conversations with the customers. They'll help you discuss payment with empathy, but also firmly, to make sure that they actually make the payment. We also have a credit management guide, which helps you manage your accounts receivable and focus on key processes that can reduce the exposure to risk. So we're happy to share the scripts and the guides with you at no cost off the back of the webinar. Just let us know if you would like a copy of those. So another option to consider is if you do find those conversations particularly uncomfortable, is to outsource your credit management. This also separates you from the process. So if you do have an ongoing relationship with that client, it takes you out of the billing process and means it doesn't muddy up your relationship with the client. So referring back to the 3 freedoms, outsourcing credit management will help you get that time back and reduce the stress around it. Frees up your time to work on important things in your business, and obviously reduces the stress chasing those up. Outsourcing is obviously best practice for most businesses. You focus on what you're good at, and let someone else focus on what they're good at. It's an efficient business model. So it's important that you build up a relationship with the provider of the credit control, so they can understand your values, your style of communication, and what sort of language you'd use. You don't want to use a provider who goes straight in there, guns blazing, and ruins your relationship with the customer. So it's important to build up that relationship and those expectations with the credit controller, and to check in regularly to make sure they're meeting those. Outsourcing is a great option, but it's not an ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. You can't expect them to fix your customers' existing bad payment habits. So that comes back to setting those expectations at the start and having a regular process so that they, if you're following them up every month, 2 days after their invoice is due, they're going to get sick of that. So ideally, they would start paying you on time. And I guess expecting the credit control company to fix these issues could cause brand damage for you and the credit control. So it's not to mention it's a waste of time. So I guess that's why we've put together these resources to help. So no matter which way you go, the important thing is to have the systems in place in your business to ensure you get paid as quickly as possible while retaining those strong relationships. So hopefully you found some of that information valuable. The key is to ensure you go away and take some action. Don't need to try and do it all at once. Just small steps to improve your systems and processes to get paid faster. So first thing you should do is calculate your cash conversion cycle, so you know how long your cash is tied up in your inventory or work in progress and your debtors, and understand the impact of late payment will have on your cash flow. Then have a look at your current debtors process. If you don't have one, make it a priority to document one. Review your process as you've got it. If you have got a written one, and compare it to what actually happens in your business. It's likely that over time the process has evolved and the documentation hasn't been updated, or maybe some of the steps are being regularly skipped. So review and revise, as with most processes, should be regularly reviewed. Make sure it's up to date. Share it with the relevant team members to ensure they understand your role in the process, and perhaps provide everyone with a checklist of some sort and to step through. Or you could look into something like Trello or some sort of other management software that you could utilize with the steps in it and run the things through a consistent process. So review your terms of trade, make sure all relevant clauses have been included and written clearly. Important to make sure it's clear and not jargony so that anyone reading it can understand it. So ensure you have a process to get a signed copy, or that it's documented that acceptance of a quote is acceptance of the terms, something like that. So use some scripts, reword the scripts to fit your business. It'll just give you a bit more confidence to talk to customers if you've got something to fall back on, and it'll give your team members confidence as well if they're using them. And then lastly, but no means least, outsource your credit management where you can to free up your time and reduce stress levels. And I guess whatever you do, not to keep working for customers who aren't paying you. You're running a business, and right now you want to reduce that risk wherever you can. If you are working for clients that aren't paying you, you're not spending time working on clients that are and will pay you. So think about that when you're dealing with these people. Obviously, get rid of them if they're not good payers, because that's ultimately they're not a good client if they're not a good payer. So I guess commit to doing something next. The point of these educational webinars and things is not that you watch it and then go, oh, that's lovely, and move on, don't do anything. Commit to doing something. So the sooner you take your action, the sooner you can free up some cash, and make a plan for how you'll sort of implement whatever we've discussed and whatever's relevant for you. So part of the planning obviously is to surround yourself with experts so we can help you with any aspects of your cash flow issues. And remember to focus on what you can do, not what you didn't do in the past. So moving forward, what are we doing going forward? Forget about what happened in the past. Get in place a solid process and get it working from now. So again, the webinar information is pretty general and not specific for tailored advice for your business. So there's a few ways we can help beyond this webinar. So we can provide you with the copies of the scripts and guides to help you get paid faster. And for those of you who want to have calculated their cash conversion cycle and want to reduce that and free up cash, our 90-minute cash flow and profit improvement meeting is a great sort of starting option. During that, we'll identify 1 to 2 strategies And it could be anything from the 7 causes of poor cash flow that may be most relevant for you, to implement and improve your cash and your profit. So we can focus this on strategies to get paid faster, or obviously one of the other pressing issues that's relevant. As part of that, along with all of our meetings, we will send you some pre-work, so to help us identify where you need the most help. If you don't have a cash flow forecast for your business, we can prepare one for you, so you can sort of plan for your cash ins and outs, and ensure you know what you've got going on this year and whether you can do the things you'd like to do. And if you need ongoing support after that and accountability to make sure those strategies are in place and that you're sticking to your budget and all of the above, the cash flow management coaching is a good investment for that, to ensure that you're actually sticking to the things you say you're going to do. So we'll send a feedback survey, and it'd be great if you could fill that in, and you can indicate the support you'd like with that, and we'll be in touch. So, any questions? There was a question there about what an external debt agency collector would do. So, as with any outsourcing, it is totally up to you how much or how little involved they are. You could just send them one overdue bill and they could chase that. And you generally pay a percentage of that, I think, or ideally you've got it in your terms that the customer would pay a percentage of that. Or you could have a fully outsourced debtor process where you send the invoice and that's as far as you go. Basically, you don't do any chasing, you don't do anything. It's the debt collection, it's the debtor management agency's responsibility to look after all debtors from that point. So obviously that's the far end of the scale to how they would be involved. Yeah, hopefully that answers that question. There's another question there about how long you should let it go, or how many times you should let it go. Ideally, you should get onto it straight away. Depends on your relationship with the client, obviously. If it's the first time, then you might let it slip a little bit the first time, but you don't want it to be a regular thing, because you're not a bank. You're not funding them. If they need cash to pay their bills, then they need to go to their bank and not you. You shouldn't be funding them for the services and goods and services that you've already provided. So chase it up quickly. Set that expectation early that you will chase it up and you won't let it go. Otherwise, it'll just encourage their bad habits, I guess, going forward. And as I said, if they don't pay and they're regular non-payers or bad payers, then they may not be your ideal client, and you may want to end that relationship amicably, obviously, because you don't want to damage your brand. Okay, I think that's all the questions. So thank you for making the time to attend or watch the webinar. So thank you, your time's valuable. I know that everybody's busy these days, so hopefully I've given you some ideas to think about, some options for how we can support you to get paid faster, and some small or large, depending on the scale of your cash flow issues, things to do to try and move the needle in your own business. So before we go, I thought I'd share this quick quote. It wasn't a quick quote, it's a long quote, but when you show deep empathy towards others, their defensive energy goes down and their positive energy replaces it. So that's when you get more creative in solving problems. So let's make sure we approach our own cash flow challenges with empathy and use that creativity to solve problems that arise. So thanks again, everyone. I'd appreciate if you could fill in the feedback survey, and have a great day. Bye.